This is a requested video to show everyone how I made this case for my Switch, and it does fit either a Switch Lite or as big of a battery pack as you might attach to your normal Switch. It'll still fit. I'm just going to show you what I have in here. Small set piece and a coin purse and my Switch, along with all of my games. I attached a little Unicorno Frenzy, and of course the zipper is nothing special, but I did buy this ribbon, and that is important that before you start sewing, you sew on this piece of ribbon if you're going to have it. Here I have this piece of ribbon, and I sewed it right to the game case that I originally had from just a cheap case I bought online. So here's the ribbon I'm going to use, and here's this piece. So the first thing you're going to want to do is sew the ribbon the way you want to look at it. Okay, so the ribbon that I'm going to use for our new Switch case is not double-sided, so I'm going to show you what you can do is connect the two sides. Of course you want to measure it if you're not like me. I just kind of wing everything. It doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm just going to sew a straight seam with the pretty sides facing. Always do a back stitch if you're using machine. Then you can flip that right side in. And if you want to, you could use an iron and make sure your seam is straight, or you can just use another seam to keep it flat. Here we have our end. And what we're going to do is just sew the two sides together completely. Go as close as you can, as close as you're comfortable with, and slowly creep along, making sure you don't mess up your characters, because then you will be angry, I guarantee it. And keep your sides aligned as you're going, but this way you don't have to pin it, because if you pin it, you're going to have extra holes that you probably don't want in your ribbon. So after you've sewed your ribbon, we're only going to sew one side. You want to double it up, sew one side of the ribbon, and leave yourself a little pocket. And inside that pocket, we're going to put our ripped off case. Slide it right in there. And this is the way I want it to go in the bag, so that they are going to face me when I'm looking inside it. So now I'm going to sew that along without closing up, of course, my game elastic. Okay, so I just got done sewing it, and yeah, I went a little overboard, but this is for my 3DS. So what I did was, and you can do this for the Switch, I sewed two together, and yes, they overlap a little bit, which is fine. They have to, or they will not fit with the change pad. So if you want it to be longer, just make sure that it will fit inside the change pad. Or you can go sideways. I mean, if you want to make it really long, or you messed up, that's cool too. In fact, this would be a great bag for just about anything, as long as you can fold it up. And yeah, you won't have the extra flap, but you can totally have, I mean, the possibilities. I'm not going to say anything about guns, because, I mean, we all know nobody uses a gun. But you could make a really good gun case with a change pad. Okay, there, I've said it. So now I'm going to show you a close-up of how that's going to look when you put it in the bag. Notice that you can flip it up and you have games on either side. That's pretty cool. Also works for amiibo cards, if you care. Alright, so we have our ribbon here, and that is on top of our zipper. So next is picking a zipper, and I'm going to show you how to sew that part on. Here's my zipper. I went a little fancy this time. That might not be a good thing. I will let you know how it goes with this little cute star zipper pull. I'll let you know if it's worth it. So when you're sewing your zipper, first you're going to take the bottom half of your change pad. Make sure that you sew this on the part that you do not want as your flap cover. Now I want my flap cover to have mozzarella right there. So I'm going to sew this with the zipper facing out. Okay, so I got my zipper facing out, and I'm going to sew along this corner here. As I'm sewing this, I'm going to go a little bit around the edge with the corners because I already know I have enough room. Now you don't want to end up short, so you want to make sure you got enough room to go all the way across as such, but you want to go down just a little bit if you have a long zipper. And I am going to sew this while it's closed. I'm going to have to start on this end because I'm a lefty. That's okay. If there's other lefties out there, let me know. I like to hear from more people. So as I'm sewing this, I'm going to sew along the binding that exists. I'm going to do a back stitch right away to make sure this doesn't come out, even though you can go over this as many times as you want. And I'm going to recommend you do a zigzag. So if you have a zigzag or any cute embroidery stitch that you like, now is probably not the time. You're going to want to do a straight stitch first while you're learning. Then you can go back and do whatever cute design you want. But you're going to be mad if it messes up your zipper. As we all know, change pads are not easy to come by anymore. I know they used to sell separately all the time, but it doesn't seem like they want to do it anymore. Which bothers me a little bit, because I enjoyed that. Now when you get to the end of your zipper and you have your zipper pull, you're going to want to move that, and if you can't, you might have to lift your foot up, and just be careful, don't move your change pad. Pull the zipper down a little bit. That will save you, because otherwise you will get a crooked seam, go back to kind of where you were, and continue sewing that. And remember to follow the edge of the change pad. As you get to the end where the zipper kind of has a little extra fabric, just sew that right along the seam. Tuck it in a little bit, do a back stitch, and it should look like this. Now I have that unzipped. Did not forget to sew it, so it's going to look like that right across. So it does angle a little bit on the sides. That's what you want. Now again, I don't measure anything. I don't use pins. I don't use those clips, and I don't want to put extra holes than I have to in this change pad. So what I recommend doing is bringing the zippered side up to where you want it. Again, you want to leave a little extra room if you want to put your cords and stuff in there. And if you maybe want it to be a wider bag on the sides, you're going to want to have it go higher, because then you'll fit more in it, even though it won't be as tall later. And I'll show you what I mean when we get there. But what you want to do is, because we are just going to use the seams to keep the zipper straight so it lines up, fold it where you want it so that it lines up here, and we're just going to stitch it along the bottom and go alongside the seam as far apart as you can. So, coming from the bottom, we're going to go up maybe 2 inches just to keep it steady where we want it. And again, you don't have to use a pretty stitch. You can go back over this stitch. So, here we go. When you're first starting at the bottom, you're going to want to keep lifting it just so it doesn't try and eat your change pad. Especially if you are deciding not to use a foam change pad. You may have issues with your sewing machine trying to eat your change pad. So just try and guide it a little bit. Okay, always back stitch, remember that. Back stitch at the beginning and back stitch at the end if you can. Alright, so here I have sewn it just a couple inches up from the bottom. I still haven't attached that zipper. So it opens kind of like that, and we're starting to see how the bag's going to look. We don't want to unzip our zipper yet, because we want to make sure that we are going to sew on an angle on these corners, but we don't want to sew on the sides all the way up yet. So the first thing you do is attach these corners to your bag where they're going to sit. Then you can open up your zipper and know that you can sew straight along there without messing up the alignment. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to sew this corner of the zipper to the bag where it lays naturally. Now I want you to unzip your zipper, and you'll see it's attached on both sides, just from what we just sewed, and it opens like that, kind of like, I don't know if you're familiar with the XY collection, but there's a bag that opens this way, and now I know how they made it. Alright, well, here we have our zipper, and we're just going to sew it straight across where we've already kept it along the back. Okay, so I've sewn my zipper now straight along the back, and I know the color kind of blends in. Alright, so the way that I have this lined up now, I can see that I'm going to have my mozzarella. Alright, so while I can still open this whole side, this is the time to sew in your game holder. So we're going to sew it right along the front seam. I like the front seam so I can see my back print. Depending on which change pad you use, you might want it on the front or the back. Either way, you're going to sew it along your zipper so that when you open up the bag, you can still lift this part out and look at your games. Okay, so I've turned my bag inside out, and this again is going to be the inside seam. The easiest way to sew this is to take your case, line it up as you want it to open up to you, and sew it along this way, along the zipper. Make sure you don't sew your zipper. Okay, so what I did, just to be safe, to keep it away from the zipper, was sew it a little bit lower than the zipper. And when I came to the end, I tucked the ribbon down so it wouldn't interfere, and sewed it on an angle. Still have this side to sew, and I still have this part all open. So I'm going to finish sewing this piece now, then I can close it up. So I've got all my games sewn in, as you can see. I have my little grim people staring at me, and I'm happy about that. So what we're going to do is turn it right side in, and continue our original seam from the bottom or top, doesn't really matter, and get that thing sealed up so we can start using it. Boom. So again, just sew it up right from the sides, close that up all the way up to your zipper. You don't have to be scared this time. So we're pretty much done, guys. This is what your case should look like now. Here, I've got it open. I got my switch in there, but it's pretty narrow, and if you try and set it down, it's just gonna, fall over. So I'm gonna show you one last step to try and give it a little width, which is also how they make quicks. So hang on a sec. Okay, take your bag and turn it completely inside out. Take one of your corners, make sure that they're pointy. Take a corner and pinch it sideways. And then sew along that corner, just like that. It should look like a little pillow. Alright, so that's what I got afterward. No, they're not perfect, but it'll do. Then we're going to turn it right side in. Alright, and you see how your corners look. If you don't like it, turn it inside out again. Make it however much depth you want. Sew a straight line if you want to. You can make it any way you want. I know I sound like Bob Ross, but yeah, really, it's whatever you want it to be. So I got my game cases in. The only last thing I might recommend, if you're interested, is adding a little bit of ribbon here. I've got a ribbon here that I'd like to use to attach 2 carabiners to, so that I can have a strap on my case. So I'm just going to get 2 equal sized pieces of ribbon, whatever size you'd like. They don't have to be perfect. And then I'm just going to feed that through this carabiner before I sew it. Make sure I have it long enough. Okay, I do. So this is how it's going to look. I'm going to sew that straight. Here I have the rough edge. I'm going to fold that down on itself twice. So just roll it. When you've got it like that, sew it straight again. Now the way you attach these is entirely up to you, but it does change how you're going to have the strap pull. So if you want to put it on this part, that's fine. If you want to put it here, that's fine. Just think about how it's going to be balanced on your shoulder. For me, I'm going to put it right at the point of the zipper, right along this side. I just think that would be best based on how my other bag hangs. Now that does mean it's going to look like this, versus if you do it on an angle, it'll look like that. So probably want to do it on the angle. Just remember, you don't want to go in too far on your bag or it's going to have a seam across your characters. So in that case, you might want to do it this way. Might not hang as nice, but you might not care. Alright, so I have the straps attached now. The only thing left that you may still want to do is get some of these clasps. And what you do there is entirely hand stitching, which I'm not going to show you or do today. But what you would do, put it somewhere in the middle of your bag where you're not really sorry to cover somebody up. Yeah, unfortunately. You're going to have to do that. And then it'll close and look more sleek. Such as this one closes. Of course, I did hand stitch that, so it doesn't look as uniform. It's not hard to do though, and when you do close it, I mean, it looks a little better. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed making this bag with me, and I'd love to see what yours looks like.